All righty. I see some people coming in. We appreciate it. Everyone, let me make sure that the chat is enabled. All right. I just want to see, where is everyone coming in from? We always started with this. What areas? Oh, Dean and I are both Southern California. Phoenix. Nice. Where is everyone coming in from? Chattanooga, Tennessee. Our director of solutions is from Tennessee. Where else? Where are you guys coming in from? Where are you guys located? India. Okay. We might have competition from the farthest from us. Where else? Anyone else? As people are coming in. Where are you guys from? Vermont, West Virginia. Nice. Early afternoon right now for you guys on the East Coast. Where else? Where else is everyone from? Brazil. Ooh. Gonna make me get on Google and see who's close, who's farthest, India or Brazil. Do you know, Dean? I think India is farther. Brazil, you're just going south. I don't know. Both very far. Illinois, appreciate it. Florida, excellent, excellent. Where else is anyone from? We're always trying to see who's the farthest. Who's the farthest and who's the closest, actually. Another person from Tennessee. Awesome. And Dean just put in the group NetSuite Made Easy. Our group, there's a lot of tips and tricks on a weekly basis we add in there as well. I'm just gonna Atlanta, Georgia, appreciate it. Yep. Good. I just put in the link, NetSuite Made Easy group. Where's everyone coming from? I see some more people. A lot of people just showed up. Where are you guys at? Newport. That might be, oh, Melissa, hey, how are you? That might be the closest. I'm in Irvine and Dean's in RSM area. So I think you might win the closest, Melissa. Yeah, of course, of course. Ooh, Macedonia. Wow, I may have to really get my calendar, I mean my world map out for that one. Calgary, Canada, appreciate it. Boston, excellent, excellent. Appreciate it. Well, good. Appreciate it, guys. We are going to get started. So this is our 8th session of our Scale North NetSuite Masterclass. Why do we put this together? It's just giving free advice and free value to the NetSuite ecosystem. We know there's a lot of pain in the ecosystem. And obviously, if and ever you guys want third-party help, hopefully you'd come to us first. But even still, there's a lot of good information. If you don't have access to our previous webinars, very tactical. And I'll take a poll here. Who is this is their first one? If you just put one in the chat, if this is your first time coming to our event. Okay. And then a 2 in the chat if you've been before. Okay, so we got a couple people. Okay, good amount of people that have actually come multiple times. So that's good. Usually that means that you're given value if you spend parts of your Friday once a month with us. So we appreciate it. So yeah, so what you're going to get today is Dean, we'll go through introductions here in a little bit, is literally going to walk you through a specific subject to save searches. He's going to have a demo account and physically walk you through step by step. So if you have your NetSuite up, you can literally go through step by step with him. We're going to ask questions at the end or maybe a couple of breaks. We're going to try and get through as much as we can. But then he'll also have, this will all be recorded. You get a recording of this, and then we'll have a PDF. PDF still, Dean? PDF of literally step by step of how to do each piece. So if you're a visual person, like to walk through it, or you just want to take your own time, Dean is so gracious to do both, which is really, really helpful. Um, we had a CFO, and no disrespect to all the CFOs that are out there. We all know you guys are not super into your system, right? It's usually your team. But we had a CFO tell us that he was literally able to build his own dashboard from just watching session one, where Dean literally walked through it. And he is also now a client, but that was nice for him to say before that. Yes, you can get recordings of previous sessions. I will put it in the chat here in a little bit, but I'll let Dean here go to our next slide. Just give me a second here.
Yeah, while you're doing that, Charles, I could talk through kind of the objective and kind of, get it going too. So thanks, Charles, and thanks everybody who's joined. For those of you who are repeat, we really appreciate your support. Again, we're trying to create a collaborative community where we can get the most out of it, right? So you see that is kind of our objective. Charles touched on it. What we see the most common things in the NetSuite space is lack of training, right? Usually most users, they get live and then they stop, right? And you got this awesome, powerful system that you're probably not leveraging to its full potential. So some of the things that we see where people aren't fully utilizing save searches, right? The power of save searches, which we're going to touch on today, CSV imports, mass updates, how to build workflows into your processes and automate things, custom records, fields, advanced PDFs. Like there's just so much, right? NetSuite's such a big space. Even us as a partner, we're learning stuff every day, right? And they're constantly enhancing it and coming out with releases and AI. So I don't think we're going to ever run out of content. And I don't think, so we're trying to help fast track a lot of people's, value to the system, right? You could try to go Google YouTube videos. You could try to go do stuff. You're not going to really see use cases expanded at this depth and at this level. So if you guys can continue to support us, share the word, get it out. I mean, we're really just trying to add value to the ecosystem so that people and companies can get the most out of their investment in NetSuite. And the most common thing that we hear said every day is, I don't know what I don't know. That's why we're hoping you can show us. And that's kind of what we try to make good on that promise. So that's the objective. The agenda for today, like I said, Charles will kick us off with just quick introductions and an overview on ScaleNorth. And then we'll jump right into the masterclass itself. We're going to cover some examples and use cases. We'll look at case win formula and some variations of it. We'll touch on some character functions formulas. And then we'll also look at how to build out a search that you can use to reconcile back to your balance sheet on key accounts using the decode formula. And then we'll have live Q&A and next steps. So with that said, Charles, I'll hand it back to you really quick to get us going on intros.
Yep, for sure. So just so you know who you're talking to, Charles Stevenson, VP of Sales here at ScaleNorth. I have managed 2 sales teams for 2 large Fortune 500 companies. My bachelor's degree is actually in accounting. I was supposed to go to Big Four and decided not to. And then we have our wonderful, lead for today's Save Search is Mr. Dean Carazza. He is on our sales team, Senior Business Development Manager, 14 years of experience in NetSuite, public accounting, private accounting experience, 8 years of NetSuite experience, 2 years actually working in the system, working for a $100 million distributor here in Orange County, and then 6 years here in ScaleNorth. He was actually a director on our NetSuite technology side optimization group, actually physically working on some of the largest, most complex implementations, over 20 implementations in the system. So he has a user experience. He has a third-party consultant helping as well, and industries, kind of the same industries that NetSuite is very strong in: manufacturing, e-commerce, wholesale distribution, SaaS, professional services. Right. So that is us. Next slide, my friend. Quickly about us, why listen to us? ScaleNorth, we are one of the largest NetSuite specific partners in North America. There are a lot of others that are larger than us in terms of size and revenue, but their NetSuite practice is small and they do other ERPs. We don't do anything but NetSuite. Almost 300 people. Most practices are like 20 to 25. Over 1,600 years of collective NetSuite experience, 600 plus certifications. I think the biggest one though is we're probably one of the biggest users of NetSuite. We do almost 3 billion in revenue per year for our clients. We have about 120 clients that we do outsourced accounting in NetSuite for them, where they outsource anything from just AP to controller and down to us. So we're not just third-party technical consultants. We're actually physically one of the largest users of NetSuite in the ecosystem. And I think a big part of it too is 62% of our team are CPAs. So that is us in a nutshell. Services at a glance, we do implementation, we do outsourced accounting, obviously our NetSuite consulting and managed services, very similar to NetSuite ACS in terms of the type of package it is. And then we have a technical services group where we actually can develop anything you want in the system as well. We have a large team of developers, NetSuite architects that most people don't have. And we have 2 or 3 apps on the Suite app that we developed as well that are physically on the Suite app. Next team. These are our technology partners. This is just the big ones that people know, that people use a lot of. I'm sure you see some common names that you have as well. Go next slide. So perfect. So real quick before we get started, if you guys can, the Q&A section, so right at the bottom of your computer, there's a little question mark inside of a comment. Use that to ask any questions. We're going to try and hold off on those until Dean either needs to take a break or at the very end, so we just get through all the good information. And then you can ask any questions you want. So put them in there so we can at least keep track of them. Don't put them in the chat just because there's stuff that goes on. We'll be putting stuff in there. The Q&A section will literally be able to keep track of it, make sure it's answered, etc. And we'll go from there. But other than that, I will hand it back to you, Dean.
All right, thanks, Charles. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. And like we said, the first thing that we want to jump into is using some saved search formulas and looking at some case win formula variations. So what we're going to start with, here's some of the use cases we're going to do. We're going to create a customer record saved search. And then on that search, we're going to show 4 different examples, right? We're going to show how to do a case win with an or statement, a case win with an in statement. And then we're going to show how we can use some aggregate functions within a formula field. And then we'll show how you can use a formula text field and a case win as an available filter. So I'm going to kind of touch on a lot of different variations here, and we'll just kind of start that way. So let me bring up NetSuite. One sec. Okay. Can everybody see NetSuite okay? Charles, can you see the NetSuite screen? Okay.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yep.
No, you're good. Okay. So we're going to get started. Like I said, the first example, we're going to create a customer save search. So we're going to go to reports, new search, and open that up. And then we're going to, you can do Control F. This is another little trick to be able to navigate easier. So you can type in the search box what you're looking for. So I'm going to say customer. And then it takes me right to that section that's highlighted. So we can click on that. Okay. And then we want to create a save search so we can save our work as we go. So we'll go ahead and click on this create save search button. And then it's going to want us to name this search. So I'm going to call this V3 MC case when variations. Go ahead and make this public. And then we can add the following criteria here. So to show this example, we're going to look at some addresses and things like that. So to make sure we get good data, we want to only look at addresses that are not empty. So let's only look at customers that actually have an address. So we can do is not empty. And then we want to look at this example just to narrow it down to kind of streamline it. We will look at only those that have addresses in the states of California or Texas. So we can go state or province, and then we can type those in here. The way it's listed in NetSuite is a little odd. You have to type the United States first, And then you see the list come up. So dash California, and then we can bring up United States, Texas. Okay, and then set. So we got kind of our example set from a criteria perspective. Next, we're going to go into the results. So let's see, we're going to just save and run this really quick to make sure it's working. Okay, so here's an address, customer search with addresses. Okay, so now we're going to add in our first formula. Let's look at our results. We can get rid of some of this stuff that we don't need here. Let's remove some of this. Okay, so we want ID, name, email, phone. Don't really need office phone. I can remove that. Don't need the fax number. I can remove that. We got primary contact, and we'll just add a few fields. So we'll add address. Okay, then we can add city, and then we can add state or province. And then now we're going to add our first formula text field for a case win. So this is a common way that I see people write a case win formula that, so we're going to show an example here. So if we do formula text field, and then we come over to our formula bar and pop it open, we can say case win, right? The field that we want is the state or province. So case win the state is equal to California. In NetSuite, you put single quotes, not double quotes. So just want to call that out, that these are single quotes if you can't see it very well. So if the state is in California, and then we can add an or condition, right? Or, this is a little redundant, but you can say or the state, so copy the field again. The state is in Texas. Then what do you want to happen? We can label it as, then let's call that West Coast, right? Else, or otherwise, we can call it other. And then end. Okay, so that's a simple case win formula. Hey, if the state's in California or Texas, let's label it as West Coast. Otherwise, call it other. Go ahead and put that in. We can give this a label since it's the first variation that we're trying out. Okay, I'm going to call this case win or territory. And then we can save and run our search. And you see it added in our formula field here for West Coast. So we see some California, we see some Texas, right? And it's properly labeled as West Coast. So that was our first go, a pretty simple example of a case win. Now we're going to show another variation, I think a little easier way to get to the same result. So let's show that. So if we go ahead and edit the search, okay, we're going to add another formula text field now. And we'll pop that open. So same thing again, right? So now we're going to go case win. What's the field that we want to look at? State or province. So case win the state, we're going to do an in condition now. So when the state is in, and then now it's really easy. You can just open parentheses and comma separate your list of values that you want this to apply to. So if the state is in, single quote, California, comma, single quote, Texas, right? Close parentheses. Then we're going to call it West Coast, else, other, end. Okay, so it's basically a different variation of the one above. I think a little easier to write than having to kind of repeat the state numerous times, right? It's a little bit easier condition. We'll call this case win in territory. And then we can save and run it, and we'll see getting the same result, right? Just a little easier path to get there. So we're good on use case number 2. Now we're going to heat it up a little bit and get into a little bit more complexity, right? So now the third use case that we want to show is how we can use aggregate functions within NetSuite and within a formula field to help. So we'll break it into its specific parts. So the example we're going to show now is, while still staying on this customer search, what if I want to look up certain information about that customer from a transaction perspective? This is just a customer search looking at master data stuff like address, terms, things like that. If I want to be able to pull insights from the customer's transactions, we'll have to join to transaction fields. So we'll see that here. So the idea is we're going to work to basically come up with an average invoice value for a customer. So if we can basically get the count of the number of invoices for a customer, and we can get the amount invoiced for that customer, take amount divided by the number of invoices, we're going to get an average, right? So we're going to show how we can like do that step by step in parts, and then nest those together into one formula to make it more efficient. So let's start with that. So I'm going to go back and edit the search now. Okay, we'll go to the results. And here we're going to add a formula numeric field. So we want to get the count of the number of invoices. So we'll go formula numeric, okay? And then we can add our formula. Now, once you start adding values that you want to see summarized or with a summary type, you're going to have to group your search. So I'm going to go ahead and do that really quick. We can group this by the customer name. We can also group it by the two formulas that we just put in here above. And then on this one, because we're saying we're going to show the count of the number of invoices, we can actually use a summary type of count. Okay. And now we're going to go ahead and put in our formula field. So here, we're going to join to the transaction fields so we can expose transaction data into this search. So we're going to do case when. You have to get the keystrokes right, but if you type in transaction fields, you see it finds it. And then we're going to say if the transaction type, right? So case when the transaction type is equal to single quote invoice, then what do we want? We want to basically count the number of transactions that are invoices. So we can say then return, let's join back to the transaction fields again. Sometimes we don't get the keystroke right. You got to try it again. Try it again. There we go. So let's get the internal ID of the invoice number. Okay. So if the transaction type is an invoice, then we want basically the transaction internal ID, and then we can stop there, right? We can just end. Okay. And we can give this a label. This is going to be count number of invoices. So it's filtering down the list for invoices. It's returning the transaction internal ID, and then we're counting them. So it's effectively counting how many invoices for a customer. And then we can save and run that. Okay. So we got Davidson Supplies has 11 invoices. Davis Supplies has 14, right? So it's just returning how many invoices this customer has. Now, how do we know if we did this right? Right? As an accountant, you always want to try to like tie out to something or make sure, you know, how do you check if you think you got the right answer? So I'd recommend that we can do another quick simple check search. So if we do a transaction search, let's pick that first customer that with 11 to try to spot check. So let's say if the customer is Davidson Supplies, okay, and the transaction type is an invoice. And then we want to look at just the main line so we know how many unique invoices there are. Let's do a quick check. 11. See right here, there's 11 invoices here. So that makes me feel pretty good that this is returning the correct value in our formula field, 11. All right, so that looks good. So we got the count. Now we can work on returning the amount value, return that back. So we're going to edit our search again. Go to our results. We'll add another formula numeric field. But this time, because we want the total amount, we're going to do a sum, not a count, right? So sum. And then we can enter in our formula again. So same thing, case when. Got to join to the transaction fields. So when the type is equal to invoice. Yeah. And then this time we can put an and condition because we really only want to sum up the main amount of the invoice, like the accounts receivable line, so that we have the total. We don't necessarily, so we can specify that we're summing just the main line of invoices by putting an and condition. So if the type is invoice and we can add in another field here, join back to the transaction fields. Okay, this was new to me. I learned this just the other day. In the first drop down, there's this asterisk. How the hell you would know that that means mainline? I don't know, but effectively it does. So if you figure out it, once you see you return the asterisk, it tells you that this is the transaction mainline field. So if the transaction type is invoice and the mainline is equal to the way that NetSuite determines the mainline, I would have thought true or false, but it uses this asterisk. So we'll say is equal to asterisk. Right? So if it's invoice and it's the main line, then what do we want to return? We want to return the amount of the invoice. So again, join back to the transaction fields, grab the amount, and then we should be good. End this off. So when it's an invoice and it's the main line, let's return the invoice amount. Okay? And we're going to call this invoice amount. So now we can save and run, see what that looks like. All right. So what this is telling me now is for that same customer, Davidson Supplies, they have 11 invoices on their account that they've had with us. And the value is $67,000, right? So again, how can we check that to make sure this is the right amount? We have our transaction tester search over here. Let me turn to criteria. Let me just do another quick search. So we'll do again just a quick validation. So if the customer was Davidson Supplies, right? And the transaction type was an invoice, and it was the main line. Yes. We can come over here and click show totals. Can remove some of this other stuff that we don't need. And just check it. 67, 7, 15, 85, 67, 7, 15, 85. So now I'm feeling pretty good that I'm returning the right values on when I'm summarizing this stuff with formulas, right? So now we can get to the last step, which is we saw it broken into its individual parts, how to get the count, how to get the amount. Well, to get an average, just need to take amount divided by count, and that will give us our average, right? So you're going to see how we nest these together into one formula now. So let's try that. Okay, so let's edit the search. Go back to results. This time we'll do a currency field just to help with formatting of decimals and stuff. So formula currency. Now we want to take the average, right? So the summary type we can use on this one is average. And then now we're going to start copying and pasting because we already have our component results here. So the first thing we'll want to do is take the amount, which we already have the formula here. So I'm just going to copy that, blow this out a little bit. And we're going to wrap this in a sum because now I'm combining calculations. I have to put the aggregation within the formula search itself. The ones above it, we were just doing individual calculations. Give me a count, give me a sum. If I'm going to combine them together, I have to put those aggregators into the actual formula itself. And then we'll summarize it back out with an average. So we're going to wrap this in a sum. So sum, open parentheses, close parentheses. So effectively have my numerator, right? And then now I want the denominator. So that would be our count of invoice. So I'm going to copy that one and come back here. Oh, it looks like I lost it. Hold on a sec. Let's try that again. Up this in a sum. Set. Okay. And then we want our count. Copy that. Come back in. And then we want to basically divide by the count, right? So divide by our denominator. And then we're going to wrap this in a count. So count, open parentheses, and then at the very end, close parentheses. Okay. And then we can set that. And then we're going to call this average invoice amount. Okay. And we can try saving and running that. Okay. So now it's returning the average. So we could spot check if I was to literally take out my calculator and take 67,715.85 divided by 11, we should have an average of 6,155. But this looks wrong because it's 1,692. So one thing that I found through testing is that you want a distinct count. If you're familiar in Excel or pivot tables and all those things, you want to return a unique count. So we have to add one more component to the search to get it correct. So I'm going to go back into the search here. And where we did our count, I'm just going to wrap that in a distinct. So let me see. So here's our count. I'm going to go right behind that. Open parentheses and just type distinct. Okay, and then we're just going to add another end parentheses here at the end and try that out. See if that worked. There we go. 6,155.99. Look at our calculator, 6,155 rounded 99. So this is an example, right? Trying to show a couple different helpful concepts, right? We showed how you can do case wins. We showed how you can use elements of sum. You can use a count, and then how you could use distinct. Sometimes with safe searches and syntax, ChatGPT will be your friend. Sometimes you just have to try through trial and error. I don't think you can find in the help or anywhere very easily that you can use distinct within NetSuite syntax. So that was just kind of done through trial and error. So just helpful tip and trick there. So that covered 3 of our use cases on the case win. We're going to get to our 4th one now and last one on the case win, which is how we can use a case win formula and a formula text field to create an available filter on a search. So to show this, we're going to actually create a new search for a chart of accounts. So we're going to go to reports, create a new search. Okay, we're going to do an account search. All right, we'll go ahead and name this. So I'm going to call this B3 SNMC case when formula text field available filter. Man, that's an awesome save search name. And then we'll make it public. And then we'll just go ahead and save and run it. So you can see just a very canned NetSuite account save search is right here. Has the account, has the name, has the type, shows you the balance. So now we want to make this a little bit more user-friendly and easy to kind of navigate around and drill around. So we're going to show an example that we could do here. So we're going to edit the search. We're going to go to results, and we are going to add a formula text field. Okay. And this is going to touch on the one of the examples we showed earlier, the case when in example. So let's do that here. So I'm going to go to my formula, pop that open. So we're going to say case when what? When the account type is in, right? Now we can open up our list of values. So when the account type is either, let's say, basically all my income statement account types. So if the account type is either income, single quote, comma, then next we would have other income, single quote, comma. Then next on the income statement, we could have cost of goods sold. And then after that, then NetSuite has an expense as an account type. And then they have other expense. Okay, then we can end it there. So these are all my income statement account types. So as such, I want to label it as just that, so I can leverage that to make it easier on my search. So if any of this, right? So if it's either one of these account types, then what? Then let's just label it as IS, which is short for income statement. Else, let's label it, if it's not an income statement account type, it's got to be basically a balance sheet account type, right? So else, we can call it balance sheet. And then end. Okay, so we could try that out. And then we can label this. So we'll say FS for financial statement. Which type? Is it a balance sheet or is it an income statement? Question mark. Maybe that's how I want to label it. And then we can save and run. And you see here, it's now classifying these balance sheet accounts as balance sheet. And so that looks like it's returning the right formula. We didn't get an error, so that's good. So next, we want to try to make this an available filter, right? And take advantage of this dynamic case when field that we can use for filtering our search. So we're going to hit edit the search. We basically want to put this same thing in our criteria tab. So I'm going to go to results. I'm going to just copy this formula. I don't have to retype it out, right? Come back here to our criteria tab. And then we have to add basically the same thing, add another formula text field. You can just paste in your formula. But now the little trick here is you want to do contains, and then you want to enter in a blank space. So watch this closely. There's a little blank space right there. Hit set, okay? And then we want to come over to our available filters section. And now this is where we can leverage it. We can, if you put a formula text field here as your available filter, we can use it. You are limited in NetSuite to only one. So you can kind of only do this trick once. So try to use it wisely on how you want to build a dynamic available filter. But it knows the first formula text will basically be the first formula text field in our search. And we want to show that in the filter region. And again, we want to label it so our users know how to use it. So same thing, financial statement, is it balance sheet or income statement? Question mark. And then maybe you want to add another filter like account type, right? Could do that type, put that in the filter. And then let's go back to our results and we can sort it by account number and just see what this looks like now. So here's my chart of accounts. It's now sorted in numerical order, right? So I'm starting off with my cash accounts and then getting into my prepaids and fixed assets and things like that you'd expect. It looks like it's properly labeled as a balance sheet. I could test that here by typing in BS, and it should now filter this to only balance sheet. And you can tell that by the account numbers here are only 1,000 through 3,000, which is basically assets through equity, right? If I want to see only income statement, I could just type in IS, click off into the white space. Now I'm looking at income statement accounts, which makes sense because I'm basically 4,000 series all the way through the end. So just a little simple tip there. You can also filter by account types further if you just want to see your income accounts. Now you're only looking at your income statement and income. If I want to look at, expenses, well, now you're looking at your income statement for all your expense accounts. This makes it a little easier and more dynamic and user-friendly than the native NetSuite chart of accounts page. You don't have any of these options with the NetSuite chart of accounts page, right? If you type in page chart of accounts, you bring that up over here, nothing, no filters, nothing. You could basically view this and export it out to Excel. This, you can add filters, you can make it dynamic, you can do a lot more stuff than even what I'm showing you right now, but I think this is just a good example of how you can leverage stuff to make it dynamic and a little bit more user-friendly. So yeah, I think that basically covers us off on our case win variations. Charles, I'll get back to you just a quick break before we jump back into the other ones if there's any questions or anything.
Hey guys, so yeah, Dean, did you want to answer a couple questions or what do you think? You want to keep going?
Let me see. Can I see the questions again? Let me try this.
Yeah, so click on Q&A at the bottom.
What is the difference between custom label and summary label? So once it's summarized and it's showing in a group, you would need to put a value in the summary label if your search is grouped. If it's not grouped, the custom label just shows on a search that's not grouped. So you can best practice would be you could technically put the same label in both, but those are my understanding of the options. That helps answer that question. How does the general address field list billing or mailing address info if they differ? That's a good question. I think there's a flag that dictates what the primary address on the account is, and the address is going to be returning whatever you have flagged as the primary address, Robin, I believe. So I think it depends on how you have your primary address, or default address is set up. The distinct value criteria is part of standard SQL. Yes, I do believe distinct is a standard SQL formula. However, if you look at the help pages, this might be helpful for some people too. You want to see some examples of formulas. If you go to your help in NetSuite, and I think up here, if you type SQL formulas, I think SQL expressions, yeah, it brings up SQL expressions. This gives you examples kind of what we're talking about today, right? How to do numeric functions, how to do character functions. It gives you some of the examples, gives you the syntax, tries to show you an example, but kind of good luck, right? I think it's a good starting point. You're probably better off trying to type in ChatGPT, how do I use the floor function in NetSuite and give me an example. I use ChatGPT all the time for that type of stuff. It will help you kind of break down technical terms in more layman terms. So that would be helpful, but I don't think distinct is listed out here. It's not, as far as I know. I tried looking here for it. And I also tried asking ChatGPT if you could use distinct in NetSuite, and it said you can't. So that's where, sometimes you can't rely on everything you read on the internet, right? You got to try it yourself to see. So, but hopefully this helps. Can you show how to only include invoices generated for a given date range fiscal year 10/1/23 to 9/30/24 in the sum formula. Yeah, Robin, if we were to do that, you would just have to include that in your case win conditions. So we were looking at let's see. Come back here. We were looking at, hey, if the transaction type is invoice and the transaction main line is this, you can add another condition, right? And the date field is between, right? You can add that into your case win formula. So be happy to maybe shoot you an example on that, Robin, if you want to see that a little bit further. But you just have to basically put it into your condition here. I think that's all the questions we had so far. Unless there's any more, we could keep moving.
I think I saw Brenda raise her hand. Brenda, if you can put it in the Q&A, we will allow people to kind of ask questions live at the end. But if you want to get it answered quicker, just put it in the Q&A and we'll definitely get you answered.
Yeah, maybe get it queued up and then we can keep going for now, Charles.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, good stuff. So now we are going to get into some character function examples. So the subject that we're going to, or the use case that we're going to do here is looking at an item, like a product list or an item search. And we're going to look at using a little bit of like the length formula, a replace formula, in-string formula, and a substring formula, and show how you can kind of manipulate off of text and how you might use that, in NetSuite with safe searches. So we will start a new search, report, new search. This time we want to do an item search. So item, here we go. Let's create a safe search here. Let's give it a name. So this is going to be V3. It's an MC, character, functions, search. Okay, I'll make it public. Now, for this example to work, I'm leveraging off of where I have sub items set up, which is using a colon as the separator. Natively, that's what NetSuite uses in a hierarchy on most lists. So location, if there's a child location, it's separated by a colon. Chart of account, if there's a child account, separated by a colon. Item, if there's a sub item, separated by a colon. So what I'm showing you here, in theory, you can use for anything that has a hierarchy in NetSuite using the colon separator. So I'm going to just kind of walk through an example here. So I only want to look at items that have sub items so that we can see that hierarchy in the colon structure. So I'm going to do sub item is not or none of none. So let's make sure that we're only looking at items that have a sub item. Okay. And then we can go ahead and run that just to see. All right, so you can see here I'm returning two items that clearly have a sub item. So the parent item is called accessories, and maybe it's a case is the sub item, the actual child item. And then maybe there's charging, right, is the parent item. And then underneath charging is a particular item like USB power cord or something like that, right? So this is an example of parent and sub items. And now we're going to show how we can do some of these character functions and how you can kind of manipulate text. So edit the search. The first one that we're going to add in is basically a formula numeric. So we want to count what's the length of this text string. So that's why we want a numerical value, because we're counting the length. And then the formula, if you click here to expand it, the function we'll use is length. Okay, and then we just have to put which field do you want the length of, right? So the field that we want to look at is basically the name of this item. This is an item search. So when I select name, it means the name of the item. So I can do that. I just got to take what it kind of dropped it in at the end. I'm just going to move that within the parentheses. There we go. So basically give me the length of this, the name of this product, the string, right? Hit set. We can give it a label. Call this length of item name. Okay, and we can go ahead and just check it. So it's telling me that this string is 23 characters long. This one is 25 characters long. Okay. Now we're going to add in another variation of a character function. This one will be a formula text field. So how long is this item name if we take the colons out of it, right? Or what does the name look like without the colon, right? We could see that. So we're going to pop open a formula here. And here we're going to do replace is the function. Okay. And then we want to start it out with what's the field that you're looking at. So again, we want the name. Put that in our parentheses. Then, comma, what is the thing that you're looking for, right? We're looking for where the colon is. So single quote, colon, single quote. So in this text string, find where the colon is and then replace it with what? Well, if I replace it with nothing, basically replace it with blank, then it's going to give me, it's going to return what this looks like without a colon in it, right? So I'm just going to do single quote, set, and we'll call this item name without colons. Save and run. All right, so you can see here, here's how native NetSuite shows it. I've now stripped out the colons from it and have it showing it just by itself. Okay. May or may not be helpful, right? Like why is that relevant? It's just trying to show how you can use character functions to manipulate text, right? So now we can kind of keep building off this a little bit more. So then we know the length of it with the colon. We know what it looks like without. How long is it without a colon in it, right? So we can add in another function here. We're going to add in another formula numeric. And basically this time we're going to take the length. We can leverage what we have here. We already have what the text string looks like without a colon. So we can just copy that formula here, right? And then we can just wrap that in a length. Open parentheses, close parentheses. And then this is basically going to be length of item name without colon. Try that out. Perfect. Makes sense, right? If it's 23 with the colon and we take out one character, it's one less. It's 22 without. Okay. Again, how helpful is that? It's just trying to show how we can kind of build out on character functions to kind of manipulate text strings and data. So then next, what we want to show is an in-string formula. How is an in-string formula helpful? It can find a particular character and tell you what position it starts at in a text string. So find in this text string, where is the colon? What number is the colon in this text string? That's what we're going to show next. So that would be formula text. And then in the functions, you can go in string, right? So it's saying, tell me which field, what particular thing are you looking for, right? And let's see. So basically, we can back this out to just here. And we want to look at the name field again, right? So I'm just going to put that within my parentheses. So look at the name and then find basically the colon. So single quote, colon, single quote, right? And then this is basically the start colon position. So if we hit save and run, it's saying that the colon happens at the 13th position of this text string. You kind of even count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 12 is a space, and then the 13th position is the colon, which matches this. So that looks right. Okay. So why do we need this? Because we're going to leverage this now in our next formula to basically strip out just this part of the text string from our from our item name field. So we'll edit the search. All right, so now we're going to do a substring formula. So formula text, pop open our thing, function, we're going to go with substring. And effectively it's saying which field, at what position, and how many characters do you want me to go? So in a perfect world, we're going to say, look at the name field. I know that the colon starts at the 13th position, right? And I just need, so I can basically go to the colon and then take just what's left after that. And that's what I want to return. So that it's just going to leave me with just my child item and not the whole text string, right? So we can kind of build on that. So we're going to put it in here. Let's see. So first thing we'll add in is our name. Put that in, comma. Then what's the starting position of this string that you want to look at? We already have that here. This is our starting position formula. So I can now make this dynamic. I'm going to copy that formula to dynamically tell me the starting position. So starting position. However, this takes me to position 13, which is where the colon is. I want everything after the colon. So I'm going to take this plus 1 so that it basically takes me to 14 and ignores the colon. So we're going to do that plus 1. Okay. And then the next part of our formula is how many characters should I go from that starting position? We can use the math and the dynamic formulas we have above to kind of figure that out dynamically. So again, I'm going to just set this really quick. So we'll want to take the length of the entire string minus our starting position will basically leave you with how many characters that is. So I can copy our length formula here. Let's pop this back open. So let's take the length minus basically where did we start? We already have our start right here. And then this should basically give us, if it worked correctly, just the item child name by itself. So we'll call this sub item. All right, so you see that here? By using this combination of character functions, we're able to dynamically look at this string and strip out just the part that we want on our own. So if you start to understand these concepts and some of these fields and formulas, there's a lot of different use cases that you can use to strip out data and manipulate data. Most people would take this down to Excel and they would use Excel formulas like mid and find and search and all this stuff. Well, if you could write the formula in NetSuite, you just saved yourself time. You don't have to export this out to Excel to get it the way you want. You can already have it ready to export, saving you a lot of time and effort, right? So that's kind of where the value of knowing some of these formulas and how you can use them comes to play. So that was it on the character functions. Let me see if there's any new questions really quick. How does the sum comment formula work? Jordan, do you want to specify a little bit more there? What do you mean by the comment?
Jordan, I'm going to try and bring you on here so you can ask this question real quick. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Jordan.
Or you could try clarifying the question in the Q&A if you want a little bit more too, but not quite following that part 100%. Going to the next one, I guess, Jordan, if you're on mute. Is there a way to generate a project search report that includes total cost of labor, equipments, total revenue, and or total billed invoices? Cassandra, the best way would be you just have to test it out. I do think in theory, again, you could either create a transaction search and group it by project would be one way, right? Or you could even try similar to what we showed earlier where we were on a customer search and then join to the transaction fields. you might be able to do a project search and join to the transaction fields to return the data. Kind of depends on what you're trying to accomplish and making sure you have to test it out to see if you're getting the desired results, but it sounds doable based on the way you ask the question. Okay, can you go back to the results again, please? My last formula says invalid, so I have something wrong. Yep, no problem. And again, guys, we will be sharing this, the deck or the presentation of this, which you should be able to copy the formulas right from there as well. And you'll also get the link to this recording. But brought this back up if that helps, Grace.
Also, Dean, Victoria said you are a wizard.
Oh, yeah, I wish. It'd be a lot cooler if I was a wizard. I'm just a dorky accountant. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you. This is good so far. So then we're now going to get into the last use case and example section. How are we doing on time, Charles? We okay?
We're right at 1 o'clock.
Okay. Well, we'll keep going. Not much more to show here. If people have to jump off, obviously you can. You'll get the recording. But we'll keep going. If you do want to hang out and ask some questions at the end, we'll be hanging around for a little bit too. So let me go to the next one. So the next example was going to be showing how in NetSuite, there's certain accounts and the way that the transaction types flow on those accounts, you can create helpful saved searches to almost serve as a reconciliation for those accounts that will easily tie back to your balance sheet. The hard part is you need to basically come up with a unique identifier or a way to group the results so that you can get a summary. So the example that we're going to show is looking at a customer deposit account and basically getting a detailed summary that will tie out to the balance sheet and kind of ignore all the stuff that nets to zero. It's only going to return those customer deposits that are still open and have a balance and easily tie out to the balance sheet. So that's what we're going to show next. So to do that, we'll want to create a transaction search. First thing I'll show is let's bring up a balance sheet so we know what we're trying to look for in the results. So if you go to reports, financial, balance sheet, let's open that up. And then if we scroll all the way down to our liabilities, this is saying that we have $23,000 in customer deposit balance. So this is the balance that we'd want to summarize. Now, if I drill into this, you'll see there's a lot of ins and outs, right? There's a deposit, then there's an application, then there's a deposit, then there's an application. So when you have a lot of these going on, you don't want to have to just look through all these lines and scroll to figure out what the balance of a particular customer and their deposit is. So what we're going to show is how to summarize that in a meaningful way. So let's create a transaction search. So new search, Control F, transaction, drill down until you find the word you're looking for. Here we go, transaction. So this should be a customer deposit search. So therefore I'm going to look at the account customer deposits. Pretty straightforward. There we go. Set. Okay, so I got my account. Next, we are going to add in a new formula that we haven't seen yet that is also a very helpful formula that's a little easier than a case when you don't have ifs and ands and ors. If it's just a very simple, if this, I want this, if this, give me this, then you can use the decode formula, which we'll show. So let's first create a search for this. Call this V3 SNMC unique identifier to group / reconcile the balance sheet. Man, that's a long name. Sorry, guys, not good at naming stuff. public. All right. And then now we can start adding in our results. So I'm going to remove the stuff that we don't need here. Okay, so we got our amount. So the first thing that we want to try to do is add in our unique identifier. We have to create one for that. So we're going to add a formula text field. Okay. And we can pop open our formula. And here we're going to use a decode formula. So it says give an expression, right? And then what do you want? If it's this, what result? And what comma separated? It's a little easier when you actually see it written out. So I'm just going to bring us back to a starting point of blank, right? So the field that we want to leverage on for logic is based on the transaction type. Will tell us how we want to classify this and create a unique identifier. So let's do type. Okay. I'm going to put that within my parentheses. Okay. So if the transaction type, now you basically can specify in a comma separated list, when this, what do you want it to be? So I'm saying if the transaction type, comma, single quote, is customer deposit, and single quote, right? What do I want to return if the transaction type is a customer deposit? I want to return the document number. So I can basically grab that here, cut it, paste it within here. So if it's transaction type is customer deposit, I want the unique identifier to be the customer deposit number itself. Okay, then what? What if it's a different transaction type? What do you want the value to be? Well, the other transaction type that flows through customer deposits, as you apply those deposits, it's a deposit application transaction in NetSuite. So I want to create a unique identifier that kind of basically is used on both so that I can sum it and we can use that. So if, let's see here, so comma, so then what's the next transaction type we want to look at? Single quote, deposit application, single quote. So when it's a deposit application, which document, what number or value do you want to return? Well, when it's a deposit application, we want to return, we're going to join to the created from field. So deposit applications are created from the actual deposit themselves, and it creates that referencing and linkage using created from. So we could actually join to the created from fields and bring that document number back. Okay, created from number. I'm going to put that here. So if it's a deposit application, give me the created from number. If it's a deposit, just give me the deposit number. In both situations, these are the same things. The created from number is the deposit number. Here, the deposit number is the deposit number. So I'm trying to return the common joined unique field that can be used as a unique identifier to sum and summarize this data. So, and then the last thing to do in the decode formula is once you finished off your string, you can just end it with a else what? Like, what do you want to do for everything else that you haven't specified? Give it a default value. I'll just also put back the customer, the deposit number. So I'll just copy the same value here and just end it like that. Okay, so we'll set that, and we are going to call this our customer deposit number. Okay, and we can save and run that. So you can see here, right, the customer deposit number is 3. This deposit application, so there was a deposit for $20,000, deposit number 3 for Davidson Supplies. They then applied $1,600 on deposit application number 2. Well, 3 and 2 is not, I can't do anything with that. They look like separate individual things. However, I can tell that this deposit application was created from deposit number 3. If we actually bring up this deposit application, sometimes it helps to see it in the UI. You see application of deposit 3. So that's how we know that, yes, this deposit was for, this application was for that specific deposit. So that's how we're able to leverage. We can now sum and group by this unique identifier that we created. Okay, so we can add a couple more fields in to make this search helpful. So we can add in those created from fields. So let's just add in created from fields type. And then let's add in created from fields document number. Okay. And then we can actually group this. So we'll group it by customer, group it by our unique identifier that we just created. And then we're obviously going to sum it by the amount of the search. Okay. And we may just want to reorganize. So we got the name. We may want the, let's move our unique identifier up. So it's the name, it's the deposit number, and it's the amount. That might be good enough. Save and run. There you go. So this $23,000 is now tied out and broken down by the actual deposit number that still has a balance. So while deposit 3 was for 20,000, there's still 18,355 open or remaining, because that's the net or the sum after what's been applied. And you can see that this $23,000 ties out exactly to our balance sheet. So rather than having to look, come here, drill into the detail, and it's just a bunch of detail that you can't really make sense of, all these ins and outs and ins and outs, we basically condensed that and shrunk that back to, here's the balance. Oh, by the way, if you want to see the detail for this, you can drill in to any line and see the ins and outs from your search. So you can, here, let me put a total on this search so it's a little bit more helpful. Edit the search, go to your results, show totals, and then we'll run it again. So if we wanted to drill down again to see the detail, you can see this $18,000 balance was made up of a $20,000 deposit and a $1,600 application. And now you basically have an easier way to reconcile your account and tie it back to the balance sheet. So just wanted to show that example as well. And I think that's it. We were going to go to Q&A, Charles.
Yep. And Jordan put some clarity in the Q&A in his thing as well.
I've been reading about ways to determine the cumulative totals without using summary types and came across this summed Interesting. I'll have to look into that a little bit more, Jordan. I'm not quite familiar with it myself. But yeah, it's fairly new to me too, that you can kind of combine and write aggregate functions right into the formula. So I think unfortunately you got to continue to research, try ChatGPT. It's not always right. Best way is to just keep testing. Unfortunately, the way I've learned most of the stuff is by banging my head against a keyboard, right? So I think it's I'll have to look in that to that some more though. And then minor question, you just eliminated a colon and I expect 2 spaces to exist, but I only see 1 space.
That was earlier.
Yeah, that was
maybe
earlier.
20 minutes ago.
Again, I think we'll send the example and maybe you can check along if you want to look at the actual formulas that we had in here, you might be able to double check. The hard part with these things, even when I'm writing these myself, sometimes I'll put a double quote instead of a single quote and it won't work. Sometimes I have an extra space instead of a space. So you do got to go back and look closely to make sure that you got it just right. But hopefully that helps, Dan. Is there a system processing benefit to using decode rather than a case-win statement with multiple entries? I don't think it has anything to do with system processing. I think it has to do with user friendliness and the time it takes you to write those formulas. Like the decode formula was a lot easier to write when you're just trying to kind of rattle off the if this then this, if this then this, if this then this. it's better than a case win formula when you just have a very singular, like, you're just giving it all the variations of when it's this, I want this, when it's, I want this. If you're going to try to do other logical things like this and this or this and whatever, you can't really use decode for that. You'd be better off with a case win, if that helps, Brian. Or Brianna, I'm sorry, Brianna. And then can you check the second, Cassandra asked, can you check the second question? It has not been answered yet.
I think it's the one right underneath it.
Oh, when I create a project search for actual cost, I use the transaction search with bill, journal, and purchase order. It showed many duplicate lines such as PO number. Do you know how I can avoid that? Sometimes that's where you have to use the main line, like you saw in our search examples earlier, because if you don't specify the main line of a transaction, it will include every line of the transaction, and that's why it's showing you the document number for every line. So if a PO number is repeating, it's probably because you're not specifying that you only want to return the main line of that transaction. That's one thing that comes to mind without looking at it. Probably what's going on there. Robin, what's the meaning of the asterisk in the results in the last example? So in that example, I don't know if I still have it up, but that was because we wanted the main line. So the asterisk was how you specify in the save search formula that it's the main line. And then when we, instead of true or false, like I said earlier, it was kind of odd. It looks for main line is equal to asterisk is how you're saying, I want to look at the main line, Robin. So I was confused too. I thought it would have used like main line is true or T or F. Main line equal to asterisk is basically saying, give me the main line, if that helps, Robin. Thanks. Basically a switch formula in Excel. Yeah, I think so, Brianna. Yep. Okay. I think that was most of the questions.
Did you get the one at the very top, the anonymous one from 1230?
Yeah, the distinct. Yeah, I answered that earlier. That I think that is part of standard SQL.
Gotcha. I just want to make sure. Cool, guys. Well, if you guys have any questions whatsoever, you can just raise your hand and then we can call on you, or you can put it in the chat and we can, I mean, it doesn't have to be about save searches, wide open. Dean is open to answering any questions. Getting some love in the chat there, Dean. While we're doing that, NetSuite Made Easy. I think we put it in the chat a few times. We'll put it in there again. It's a LinkedIn group where you're able to get tips and tricks that are put in there on a pretty much weekly basis, right, Dean?
Yeah, I try to every week, and then I usually post these recordings and things out there too. And it's a free group, right? It's just a LinkedIn group. It's just helpful to be part of the community and see other helpful NetSuite tricks and stuff. So I definitely recommend if you haven't joined it, please join it. We're trying to grow that community.
Yep, I just put in the chat again. A couple questions from Brianna and Jordan.
Transaction save search the name field. How do you know when it's the customer versus the vendor? You would have to put some other criteria in there to specify. So if you put transaction type is equal to bill, then it's that transaction type will further filter down to what type of entities are in the results, Brianna. There's not like a vendor or customer condition. It's more of like the name field is an entity field and it dynamically knows based on other criteria and stuff, whether it's a vendor or a customer. But again, that might be where you can use a case win formula to kind of help categorize your data, right? You can kind of create a case win that says, hey, when the transaction type is bill or expense report or whatever, label it as a vendor. Or, if it's so you can kind of come up with different ways to do that, but that's how I think you would do that. Is there a way to merge two searches, like if you're looking for information that is too far removed from the original search. Example, want invoice details and revenue arrangements. So Ashley, the best way to do that is you can join to whatever is available. The only way you kind of know that is if you're on any particular search type, right? If you go into the drop down, if you start to scroll down, you'll start to get into where fields are. So any of these things that say fields is how you can join to another table in NetSuite. This is a chart of account search, so it's not that helpful. But if I was to go to, again, if I was to create like a customer search, customer, right? Results, hit the drop down. Once you start seeing it say fields, these are all the further detailed drills that you can do to other tables in NetSuite. Now we're into the fields. So I can drill to activity fields. I can drill to address fields. I can drill to contact fields. I can drill to, you see all the different options. Usually, here's project fields for Brianna, who was asking earlier, right? There's ways that you can drill to all the different tables. You can drill from whatever's here. If it ain't here, you can't do it, unfortunately. Unless you hire us to build a script or something that can merge searches together. We do that all day long, right? But you have to have that technical skill set to be able to do that yourself. So I hope that answers that, Ashley. And then Jordan, can you review how to use the parentheses for the criteria correctly, especially when nested? Yeah, I got to be honest, I struggle with that too, Jordan. So maybe what I can do is I can come up with some examples and maybe we'll show that on a future masterclass. I don't think I'm prepared to show that today, unfortunately. But I think it's a good call out and another section of saved searches that most people don't know how to do. I think you're talking about this right here, right? Use expressions. Is this what you're talking about, Jordan? Exactly, yeah. So usually I just try it out, right? It does follow most parenthetical syntax. So like if you have, open, close, you want two parentheses, you want to make sure you're closing it with two parentheses. Again, I'm not prepared to show that here today, but I think we can make note of that and we'll get an example out in the future on the next masterclass.
Good stuff. Any more questions? And if you guys want to just raise your hand, you can just raise your hand if you have any just random questions. It doesn't have to be Save Search related. It can be literally anything. Before we do that, I'm actually going to put up our poll, our survey. If you guys can just take literally 30 seconds and just fill these out. This helps us tremendously to understand what is good value that you guys want to see. And it gives us an understanding of what to go after in terms of new content. Otherwise, this is for you guys, like I said. Otherwise, we don't have direction, what to do, what not to do. It just gives us an understanding of, was this helpful? Do you guys like it? Is there anything else that you guys want to see? So if you can just take literally 30 seconds, fill this out, it helps us tremendously. This is always free, as you guys know. We don't charge anything. We just say we just need your email address to send you the invite, and that's pretty much it. So if you guys can do that, I think Jordan just put another question in the chat too.
Okay, we'll take a look at that in a second. And I just want to call out there too. Again, we really do, the more you guys can help engage and be collaborative, right? It's a safe place. I know sometimes people don't want to necessarily, put themselves out there and go on camera or talk or go off mute and stuff. But the more that we can understand and uncover, like Jordan's doing great, right? Jordan's like, what about this? What about that? How do I do that? Like, that's what we want it to be engaging, because that tells us where we should spend our time and is only going to helps us, and it helps users get more out of the system, right? So the more you can give us example, where are you spending the most manual time in NetSuite? What would you like to learn more about how to do? We'll show it. We just need a little help and direction too. Like otherwise we just keep showing what makes sense to us. So like for next month's class, targeting June 20th, if Charles is available, targeting doing an example on workflow automation. Cool. I don't know, but if anybody has something else in mind, or you want to get some ideas out there that we could take into consideration for next month or future months, please like put it in the chat, send us an email. I got my contact info here. If you have any NetSuite pain points that have been driving you nuts and you just want to see, are there any options available? How could we possibly, dial some of this in? My Calendly's right here. Grab some time with me. Happy to spend some time here. And yeah, so really just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Yep. Please do it. Like I said, literally takes 30 seconds to do, and helps us tremendously, so we know exactly what you guys are looking for, what's important, etc. So Jordan has a couple other questions there. And Jordan, if you just want to jump, did you want to talk? You can definitely do that. I'll try it again if you really want. If you just want to jump in and ask, you can unmute yourself now.
Hey.
Hey, Jordan.
How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for chiming in here. It's
thanks
helpful.
for interacting.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I've been trying to go through some of these for the cumulative piece. I've essentially been trying to figure out ways, especially for our warehouse, to be able to review different types of items that are set within bins, especially since we use double deep racking in there. So ideally, they'd like to have 1 or 2 items in a total bin. So we're essentially trying to find a way for them to be able to quickly see what bins have pretty much empty space, or which bins need to be reviewed to see whether or not things need to be moved to different areas or where things can be combined. I know that gets a little bit tricky because NetSuite doesn't really have a record for kind of pallets or tracking kind of items on a pallet.
Right.
Best case scenario, we'd love to be able to see, okay, we have this specific item in bin A01.1, we have, I don't know, 3 pallets of 50 each. We know we have 1 available pallet space, or we have 3 pallets, 2 of them are full, 1 of them has empty space, or isn't full, kind of trying to be able to figure out how to combine those, which is where I came across this some comment over partition by, but it's a little bit tricky from what I've been trying to go over. It seems like there's another way to do that one as well. But that's one thing I've been trying to tackle on there. The parenthesis has always been a bit of a challenge with NetSuite, not so difficult to sell, but here I feel like it's always trying to, especially when you're getting down into something that's a bit more nested, the expression builder is always throwing out some sort of error. So I think that'd be good to review.
No, I can relate. And if you want, Jordan, I mean, grab some time on my calendar. If we want to look at a specific use case, I'd be happy to do that with you. It might be easier to actually see it and kind of work together, like have a quick review of it.
Okay, awesome.
Same thing. Second thing, right? Like I'm an Excel guy. I know how to write all this stuff in Excel. I'm still learning how to write the equivalent syntax in NetSuite. I don't know SQL. I'm not a developer, right? So it's a case win is nothing more than an if statement to me in Excel. But so just even for somebody like me who's been doing NetSuite for a long time, I still sometimes struggle with case win, and else, and like it's not what I'm, so it definitely takes practice, and the more that you can try things and apply it to something that a real problem you're trying to solve is when the concept sticks. If you're just copying and pasting from Google or whatever, half the time you're not going to get, because you don't even know, like it just either works or it doesn't, and you're not going to figure it out. So that's why, like you saw, whenever I do something, I try to break it into its individual parts, and then you can copy and paste them and nest them in. It's a lot easier to build it out. If you just tried to write one giant nested formula, the chances of that working are slim. So yeah, I can totally relate to what you're saying, and I do appreciate your engagement here today. Grab some time with me, man. Happy to talk through it some more.
Awesome, thank you. And then 2 other sections. I don't know if you've covered these topics before, but one that I think would be helpful for myself and probably a lot of other people would be bit of a review of the MRP workbench,
Okay.
viewing the different fields on the item record and seeing how those fields actually impact the results of the workbench, kind of getting into the reschedule in, the reschedule out, the different horizons, because it seems like that is not as well documented in any of the kind of help articles that I've been trying to look at.
Okay.
And the other one, I know someone else before was saying that they're trying to see things that may not be completely connected. And we've run into that issue as well. But I know that Suite Analytics and those workbooks now have the ability to be connected, but I haven't been able to figure out a good way to actually kind of connect those records, similar to like an X lookup in Excel.
Yeah. Yep. Again, you are limited to whatever drop down fields show on a particular search, so that you have to exhaust that first. That is a correct statement. Analytic tables and workbooks somehow do allow you to do more joins. I think we've shown, or I will show in a future class, how you can actually join tables in an analytic workbook, like you're saying. So you get a little bit more flexibility there. Once I learned analytics, I kind of stopped using searches because as an accountant, I like to pivot table everything. And you can't really do a pivot table in the search. You can group it and kind of get there, but a pivot table allows you to literally have the functionality of a pivot table where you can expand, collapse, drill down. You could do there's a lot more you can do there. I think the only hard part with the analytic workbooks in NetSuite is they're not great for putting them on your dashboard. They get really big and clunky, and it's helpful to have that data summarized at your fingertips. Charles can relate, but trying to necessarily drill in and interact with it gets a little kludgy, and I think that's why people still like save searches more. But
Yep.
yeah, we can touch on that and look at other options. The other thing is a lot of people at some point look at a reporting tool outside of NetSuite. NetSuite does not have crystal reports. I mean, it has decent reporting capability. If you're coming off QuickBooks or things like that, it's better than that. Obviously, you see the power of save searches, but if you have very complex reporting requirements, NetSuite's probably not going to handle it for you. And we have other partners that we partner with who really extend and basically can give you reporting on steroids and stuff like that too. So it's looking at your requirement, understanding, what's the best, what are your options and what's going to add the most value and if it's worth it or not.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jordan. Appreciate it.
Have a nice weekend.
And sorry guys, I know we picked a Friday before Memorial Day. That was my bad. I was in Texas the week before, and this was really the only time we were going to be able to do it. So I appreciate all those who joined and probably are ready to start their weekend.
And we did end Friday of month end either, so on the 30th, so pushed into June. So sorry, but thank you guys for coming out because it's good turnout. And if you can please, like that one last push, please fill out that survey. It's literally like 8 questions, take you 30 seconds, helps us tremendously in understanding what's important for you guys. Like I said, this is all for you guys to understand, what can we do to be helpful, and then you will get a copy of this recording as well. I put in the chat the link to the previous webinars. You can go there, check out the webinars, and fill that out, and then you'll get a link to it. So good. I'll give it a couple minutes. Any other questions, feel free. You can just raise your hand. You have to put in chat if you want to raise your hand, or if you want to put in chat, that's fine too. But please fill out the survey before you exit stage left. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'll give it a couple minutes here, but the survey should pop up on your screen, and hopefully it's you guys can give us 30 seconds and fill that out, please, please, please. Any other questions? I mean, any NetSuite, doesn't have to be Save Search. Literally any questions you guys have, feel free. This is your time before the weekend. No. Going once. Going twice. Gone. Well, good. Appreciate it, guys. Well, you guys have a amazing Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy your time with family, Thank you for all of you that are have served or know anyone that served. We appreciate their service as well. Brandon, you're very welcome. If we can give a little bit of love to Dean in the chat, that would be great. Throw some fire emojis or some ones. He's a Kobe fan, so you can throw an 8 in the chat as well. So he calls himself the Kobe of NetSuite. So if we can give Dean some love before we leave, that'd be greatly appreciated. But have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks,
God bless.
everybody.
Bye, guys.